Peace and love, everybody. Salute. Salute, y'all. I have a very interesting discussion that I want to hold with you today. And it's a very, I'd say, sensitive subject. It's certainly one that is delicate, but it is definitely one that is imperative above all that I think that we should be having. And it definitely touches upon a lot of the aspects that we hear within the political gaze right now. And it's one that is historically linked among and amid a lot of political discussions. And I wanted to, of course, center it there, within everything that's going on in the dialogue right now politically, but also just historically as it pertains to our people, as to Black people in this country, in real talk across the globe. I certainly thought it necessary to do a commentary on this matter because there are some very alarming intersectional aspects that correlate deeply to this point. And the matter is concerning that of abortion. Okay. And I touched upon it in the previous commentary, yesterday's commentary, a little bit. But I felt like it was so imperative for me to give it a platform of its own because of the myriad aspects that, kind of cross into what is being promoted across the political landscape right now, and just the general stance that Americans have on abortion and have had. It's going to touch upon some historical facts and things like that. So I felt like this was a real central topic that deserved its own stage and platform. So, as we know, abortion in this nation is, always a topic of discussion, right? Concerning the electoral process, the pursuit of presidency and things like that within each cycle, right? It's always, it never fails. It's basically an inextricable part of debate in this nation because it ties to all sorts of modalities, okay? It ties into, various aspects of life concerning, personal values, to religion, to education, and even extending into, profits for businesses and racism. Okay, so there's a lot of factors tied in to conversations surrounding abortion. So it's certainly a very weighted topic, and it's one that deserves attention and analysis on all fronts. I have no doubt about that. It's a central topic and theme because it covers and touches so many bases in people's lives, right? However, what I find to be disconcerting and problematic among the discourse surrounding abortion, it tends to be the way in which the dialogue is shaped around this topic. Now, it's common that whenever abortion is brought up, we often hear pretty much two distinct polarities in the view, right? So you get one on one hand that totes the pro-choice narrative, right? Which stipulates that, pretty much no government or institution should be allowed to tell, particularly a woman, what she can or cannot do with her body. That's the first kind of scope. And then you have the second approach and position, which holds the view of pro-life. So you got the first one, pro-choice, and this second one is pro-life. And that stance supports the notion that at any stage during a woman's pregnancy, should she decide to no longer carry that child, she is pretty much in the wrong ultimately for opting for abortion because life is life, right? So those are the two, distinct views. And, what side one stands on, of course, depends on many of the factors that were aforementioned, one's education, one's personal belief system, et cetera, et cetera. But essentially what my problem here is in the discourse surrounding abortion is that in either notion, there is a failure to recognize that the perspectives people tend to generate within the discussion tend to care nothing about the sacralizing of life when it pertains to the lives of Black people in this country. Nobody's religious beliefs or personal attitudes towards a matter, value systems ever seem to come into play on the main stage as it pertains to life of Black folk. We don't have politicians coming out in the droves, in tropes, waving the banner for, how precious life is, or how life is life and shouldn't be tampered with as it pertains to our people's lives. Lives that at the hands of this system face unimaginable levels of stress, threats, and harm. This is why every time I am, faced with discussions concerning abortion on the major stage, on political platforms, or within general discourse and dialogue, I kind of have a cynicism, a skepticism about, people's preciousness over this matter concerning this issue, but that life is not regarded in the same way across the board. We could even take this, out of the jurisdiction of this country, and we can go into what we are seeing in Palestine and the disregard of life of the, hundreds of thousands of children, men, women, dying at the hands of what? People's greed, people's lust, people's fantasies, people's xenophobia, and all other types of things. The regard for life isn't being regarded at all. So that the dialogue that I hear, generally circulating right now amid the political landscape is just, I'm dumbfounded by it. And it really had me raising a lot of questions and concerns and points that I felt necessary to speak to you guys about and engage with you about. The reality is that whether one's discussion or point of view coincides with, the idea of the quote unquote right to choose position, or if it, aligns with the life is life posture and you shouldn't be touching it and things like that, what is never spoken about, is, the Black women, the Black men, the Black families whose lives, as evinced and supported by the government and the major institutions of this nation, mind you, according to them, these Black lives do not even amount to a drop in the bucket. So on the matter of abortion concerning Black women, why don't we ever hear about the history, for example, of Margaret Sanger, the woman who is responsible for the organization Planned Parenthood, okay, which under the guise of providing measures for quote unquote birth control and quote unquote women's rights, pushed some of the most vile and racist dialogues centered around and based in the theory of eugenics, you guys, which is a theory that believes in the ethnic cleansing of Black people and anything non-white. Yes, eugenics, okay? It's eugenics that postulates that the white supremacist delusion holds true, that the Aryan race is pure and mustn't be tampered with by the likes of African people who are at the bottom of this supposed barrel. And that the only way to assist this degraded stock of people, meaning us, the only way to assist this people group is to ensure their ultimate erasure by way of population control. Look at that. So birth control as a form of population control for these untouchable folk. This is the ideology of your abortion founders of this nation. Planned Parenthood, okay? Planned Parenthood still stands today, you guys, as many of you may know, okay? And it's responsible for, supposedly providing abortion options. But not so ironically enough, to women in outstanding numbers across the nation who happen to be Black women. Also not ironic is the fact that Black women make up, according to a stat that I saw, about 40% of all abortions in this country. Did you guys know this? 40% of all abortions had in this nation are had by Black women. This is according to the statistic. Now, mind you, I don't take anything for face value, okay? And, I'm wondering what the statistic is based on and how many women were questioned, how many medical records were reviewed, if any were reviewed, and things like that. Of course, all of that comes into play. But that is a very significant number to consider. Consider this number, okay? And consider it alongside the fact that you can come across a Planned Parenthood facility pretty much in every heavily populated Black community in the country. Okay? Do you think that is coincidental? Do you think that is by happenstance that these numbers are so high, given the high numbers of Planned Parenthood facilities in Black communities? These are pretty much set-up shops, if you will, for the abortion of Black life. So it makes me wonder about all of this quote unquote access to abortion talk and rhetoric that we hear among these representatives and have heard for decades. It makes me wonder who they are talking about when pushing these narratives of quote unquote a woman's right to choose or a woman's right to access. Makes me look at that really closely. Because it seems to me that if it is true that Black women make up something like 40% of abortions in this nation, that maybe we need to renege as Black women from our level of accessibility to these types of things. Okay? And imagine at such a rate how much Black people are funding these very medical industries. Think about that, you guys. The dimensions of this, is truly astounding. Abortions ain't free, okay? This is big, big business at play, which is why I mentioned business as among the centerpieces of the dialogue surrounding abortion. Furthermore, it begs the serious question that we as Black people need to pose, which is, who are these Black women getting abortions at such an alarming rate, if this is true? If we look at it from this as being a fact, right? Do we know them personally, these women that are out here running to these clinics? Why are they taking the option so consistently and so aptly? Why is that the consistent option for them? What do the conditions of their lives entail that is, causing and pushing this option to be taken? Is it financially related and based? Is it related to matters of abuse in alarming numbers for the reason why women are getting such a high level of abortion in our community? Is it because they have chosen the wrong partners? Like what is the line? Okay, what is the median interest that is determining this particular outcome? These are the types of things that Black people need to be asking in looking at such a stat. We also need to be asking how we can rectify an issue of such paramount proportions. 40%? That is an astronomical number, astronomical in scale. The issue at hand seems to be more linked, if we'll talk, to societal factors than we're probably willing to assume in reality. I have no doubt about that whatever. Why aren't we talking about this as a people? Me and you. Why aren't we talking about this? Black men and Black women. Why aren't we talking about this? Where are we on this issue? Okay? Because I hear a lot of topics and conversations going around and circulating on a daily basis, from everything from goddamn, sports to damn, who's dating who and oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. Where is our stance on this issue? We can't agree on life, Black man and Black woman. We can't agree on life. That's what that statistic is showing. Our women are running to Planned Parenthood, giving a system that is out to end every facet of the flourishing of our lives. She is running to them to add one less Black male or female's existence on their list. And let me be very clear. The issue is not in, getting an abortion if that is what is needed for a woman. Okay. That is not my issue. I have no issue with a woman taking that stance. Things happen, I understand, on myriad levels, some traumatic, some personal, all of it personal, real talk. That's not the issue. My issue is the alarming rate in which Black women are taking that route, according to the stat. I want to know what can justify that percentage. How is it that we don't even make up 40% of the population, but we account for an overwhelming amount of abortion in the nation? Black people, we really got to take our heads out of the clouds, out of the phones, out of the latest trends and the, whatever have you. And we need to start paying attention to our state of being. The unifying of Black men and Black women is paramount. There is nothing above that as far as we are concerned. It is the most important action that we can take as a people. We cannot have this dichotomic position anymore, this adversarial position with each other anymore. We need reparations within us. There is no reparation like that of the Black masculine and the Black feminine unity. We got to wrap our minds around this, you guys, and all types of matters concerning our lives. Obviously, there's a failure to communicate among us, okay? Where are the Black women talking to Black women? Where are the queen mothers in the building, that are, talking to the younger generation of women and, letting them know what it is, this thing called womanhood? Where are the Black fathers, the Black figures? Males talking to other males, males talking to females. Where is the dialogue and the discourse and the trust between us? That needs to be built. That needs to be repaired. Now, I'm not sure, if you guys have heard or are familiar with the wonderful book called Medical Apartheid, written by Harriet A. Washington. Absolutely a must read for all Black people across the globe. Okay? Every African ascendant should own a copy of this book. It's a book that details the centuries of crimes inflicted upon Black people, our bodies. Okay? It's a must read. I advise everybody to go pick up a copy of that. It's discussing all types of crimes deliberately carried out to violate, dehumanize, slaughter, and subject our people at the hands of these institutions. Okay? Government funded, government backed, government approved. Okay. Many of you may be familiar with the Tuskegee experiment, right? So as an example of a situation that can be considered medical apartheid against Black people, that basically stands in a long line and in a long history of medical terrorism that Black people have faced. Now, I mention this because Black people have to, in my view, pay severe attention to the narratives being spun, not only on the political front of the electoral cycle and all of this, as I've mentioned, but in every area of our lives. Likewise, within every area that we receive information. Okay, I'm talking news, media, entertainment, you name it. So much gets said on a daily basis that we come across as Black people in this nation that, if allowed to go over our heads, if we are not intelligible about our position as Black people in this country, that information can just take us over and we will be inculcated with all types, as we are already, but we will further be inculcated, with notions and ideologies that do not serve us and that will lead us further away from our empowerment. I use the political front as a centerpiece for my analysis to share with you guys because I have a serious issue with hearing the level of emphasis on abortion on this particular front, because it's used as a scapegoat to mystify the public that this nation and its institutions care about the lives of its citizens. It has, a very relatable humanitarian air to the language. Okay. The parlance is that of saying, oh, well, life is important and we care about life when we have all the evidence to point the contrary, and particularly for marginalized people. And we know that there's no one more marginalized than the African American person. This is why I say that it's so imperative for us as Black people to pay attention to every medium, every form of information, news outlet, whatever have you, even within our own personal dialogues. We must be aware of what is going on. How can this notion of life and supporting life, the sacralizing of life, be toted around, by these figureheads, when these very politicians are afraid to even mention police brutality in this nation against Black people, not excluding children? Let's not forget Tamir Rice or Antoine Rose, underage minors. I have a serious issue with the stance on this quote unquote pro-life stance, or these topics surrounding life, when countless Black people's lives on a daily basis are completely disregarded and deemed unworthy. If this is the sentiment had for the people living and walking the earth, of course that's not going to differ or apply differently to the unborn Black life. Because the harsh reality is that whether or not, people are going to get an abortion who are Black, what is the reality is that it does not spare them either way of the possibility of trauma and bodily harm done onto them. Pro-abortion or anti-abortion is of no consequence to the reality that we face as a people in this nation. The threat of harm and maltreatment applies to every facet and area of Black life. Okay. And that isn't only relegated to bodily harm. Okay. Because there is also the harm that is done mentally. Okay. Which many consider to be irreparable. Okay. It is our minds that carry trauma that can affect our bodies in tandem. So there are all levels: psychological, physical, spiritual, and whatever. Where is the concern for that life? Are we only selecting, picking, and choosing which aspect of life, at what stage of life we can find value in? I'm not down with that. Okay. So the intersectionality of issues for Black people, concerning all levels of threats, impositions upon our wellness, it really is incalculable. All the areas and all the points that it touches in our lives. So, I point out abortion because, to me, it's a crystallized example to give you, and it holds within it a composite of materials that can be readily seen and understood within the example that I give you, because it touches on so many facets, as I hope I clearly explicated for you. So what I also wanted to point out in this discussion is the aspect of agency, the authority over one's self. Okay. Now, we've had, for example, let's use the political landscape again. We've heard Kamala's stance on abortion, right? And many other figures in this past who have spoken about it, right? They say things like, oh, well, you can't tell a woman what to do concerning her body. You're not going to be able to tell her what she can and can't do, right? So we hear that all the time from people who take the pro-choice stance. Yet the matter of agency over one's life is never a factor, issue, or concern when Black people are being murdered. Okay? This is never a factor when a 13-year-old boy is being harassed. There is no concern for his agency when he is being manhandled by police on his way home from school, for example. So do you see the way the lines are being teetered among, a sense of agency in the parlance of these figureheads and the political landscape and all of this? Do you see what I am attempting to draw here? That the emphasis of agency is on a woman not wanting to, carry out a pregnancy, right? But it is not on the sanctity of someone's life in their day-to-day lives outside of situations concerning pregnancy. Why is the focus pregnancy? It's crazy. The stance being taken here that the pinnacle and the example of one's agency is relegated to, one's decision to either have a child or not have a child is absurd. That's really what I want to paint here for you. Okay. Abortion is an aspect of a social need. Okay. It sits within, the important dialogue around, healthcare, medical necessities for all of the people who need it. Yes, 1000%. Okay. It is not the centerpiece, however, for what it means to have authority over one's body. It is not the example, the end all be all. And I would even go further as to posit that the political discourse being focused and emphasizing this particular aspect of, I guess, agency, or an aspect of one's agency, particularly that of women, is to dissuade from all other aspects of one's personal agency over one's life in every other area that I gave an example of, and beyond the examples that I provided here. Just agency and authority over oneself in general, and how that should not be impeded upon by anybody via the law, institutions, or otherwise. How mighty convenient that they keep it on the subject of abortion, but not life in general, because, it is plain as day that there are bodies in this nation that they want to keep under control, and there are bodies around the world that they want to extort, exploit, and dehumanize in order to reap the benefits of the resources that they feel they will gain from enacting such acts of crime and violence on those bodies. Okay? Yeah. That part. The body politic is very real, you guys. Very real. And let us not be forgetful of the fact that it was the disregard of the agency of the Black body that has formed and fortified the basis of this nation. Let's never be forgetful of that. The agency has too long been dictated by and governed by the people and the system who have kept the Black body in a perpetual state of humiliation for centuries. Wherever Black bodies have been, they have faced denial of medical attention, abortion, employment, loans, housing, education, and every facet of the right to live. Abortion is simply a boulder among a mountain for our people. Let's not allow ourselves and our attention to be swindled towards, such phrasing that seeks to assuage the alarming realities that we face in real time. The agency of our well-being is what our ancestors fought for and worked for. It is what our families continue to work for, step for, and stand on business for, because they want to see it lived out and experienced in the now. Never forget that either. I want us to be reminded as Black people, to use the agency that we do have, because we got a hell of a lot of it, despite what we have been taught on many levels to believe. Okay, let's use this agency today to equip ourselves with force, power, and knowledge so that we can begin to enforce the much, much needed changes within the things that we see personally as individuals, within our families, and of course that ultimately extend out into the larger community. That is always my aim and my focus. You already know what time it is. Black, no sugar, please.